I'm sitting in my bedroom and I'm here to rant about Twilight. For those of you who don't know me, when I was 12 years old, I was obsessed with Twilight. Like, really obsessed with Twilight for a while. And when I saw this book in the library, I just had to read. I had to read this thick, new Twilight. And I have some thoughts. Firstly, this is not going to be a hate video on Twilight, okay? I don't hold with hating on things that teenage girls love. Twilight was a big part of my teenage years, and I'm not ashamed of that. But I have some thoughts about the book, and I'm just gonna rant about them. Firstly, I really loved this book. It is not a good book at all. I think it's really dodgy in places, but it's so fun. If you loved Twilight as a kid, like, it's so fun. It feels like a good closing chapter on the Twilight part of my life. Like I finally have closure for all the years of wondering what Emmett was like behind the scenes when he never got enough time in the books, or wondering how much Stephenie Meyer really hates Rosalie. Spoiler alert, a lot. Firstly, an explanation. This book is the first Twilight book from the perspective of Edward. It's like double the thickness of Twilight, without double the story to tell. But it's all Edward's perspective, with a lot of mind reading of every other character involved. I will say the premise of having your narrator be a character that can read minds is really interesting. You can do a lot of things, go to a lot of places, and this book mostly just doesn't do that. Almost every human character that he mind reads thinks exactly the same, and they're all thinking about Bella, and it gets a little bit dull. There are occasionally characters who don't think like that. I don't want to give massive spoilers, but like Charlie and Renee, Bella's parents, both think differently to other characters. And that was really fun and exciting and different. There's a reason behind why Edward can't read Bella's mind, and it doesn't entirely make sense, but it doesn't have to do, and it's fine. The mind reading at times in the book gets in the way of the plot, I think, particularly with the character of Rosalie, who clearly Stephenie Meyer just hates, because Rosalie doesn't do anything except be jealous and awful the entire book. She is moody, she is like controlling, she is a genuinely horrible, evil person, and it doesn't make sense. It just reads like Stephenie Meyer wants us to hate any character who's vaguely pretty in the book. There are other characters that Edward mind reads as well. For instance, the men that try to hurt Bella in Twilight. In this book, one of them is a serial assaulter, and yeah, Edward can read exactly into his mind and still manages to censor everything that he's saying. I just think it's a massive cop-out. Every time Edward, a character who spent like a decade eating random bad people, reads the mind of a bad person, we never actually know what they were thinking or saying. It's just, it just feels kind of like she was just scared to write it. It would be so much more interesting to get like a flavour of what it's like to be someone who can read the mind of evil people. One thing that's fun about this book is every time it leaves the canon Twilight story and goes off and does something slightly different, it goes into slightly more depth on Carlisle's transformation and Edward's time as a hunting human vampire. Those bits are really exciting. And then we're back to the same story that we've already read. If you're me, you've read it many times. And some of it is word for word for massive chapters with nothing new to add to the story at all. One of the biggest new bits added to the story is the giant chase across America with James when they're trying to save Bella. Carlisle, Emmett, and Edward chase him all the way to Canada, and he's following them, and they're in a car, and it's a car chase with vampires, so it's really not as exciting as it could be. Mainly, they just spend a lot of time explaining how Edward can, like, speed down the road safely because Emmett and Jasper turn their heads so he can see everywhere on the road. I was like, I don't care. They're vampires. You don't have to explain how they're not going to crash. Just have them fight. And they don't. They never fight. They never fight. And James is kind of even more interesting, slightly more interesting as a villain. He has more plan, more than just being evil and wanting to eat Bella. But then them getting down to Phoenix to save Bella, despite them all being vampires who can run incredibly fast, they have to do elaborate car chases past police blocks and like drug a woman and steal her car and then steal another car and go different ways to avoid police. It's like, is this Twilight or Fast and Furious at that point? It was entire chapters, maybe even 2 chapters of them driving. I just want them biting people and running fast. That's what I signed up for. I will also say Bella as a character in this book has slightly more personality, mainly because we spend the whole time thinking, oh, why is she, well, Edward spends the whole time thinking, why is she doing this thing? Why is she reading this book? And it's, for some reason, a mystery. Edward is horrible in this book. He goes from stalking Bella and feeling slightly guilty about it, and that being the book's way of excusing the fact that he is doing horrible things. He's a vampire. He's a 100-year-old vampire. I would much rather him just not consider it evil because he's a vampire and she's just a pathetic human, and then he learns to love her. You don't need to explain in depth the rules of human relationships so much. It just makes me realise how awful of a person he is. I don't want that. I want my Twilight guilt-free. I don't want to make this sound like I don't like the book. I know I'm pointing out a lot of critiques and stuff, but I'm British and I love to rant. This book was really easy to read. It's definitely not for anyone who doesn't already know Twilight. If you don't know what's going on, you're going to think this is incredibly weird or boring. But for someone who grew up on it, it was a joy to read. It's 756 pages, and I got through it in a week. One thing I really love is there's a lot more Emmett in this book. That's always a good thing. There's never enough Emmett in the books. He's just a really fun character. I love a guy who's just always happy no matter what. You know? There's more Carlisle in this book. Love Carlisle, he's a babe. He does a few more exciting things. Another thing is that Jacob keeps smelling something bad every time Bella's around Edward. And it's like, ooh, he's gonna turn into a werewolf. But he doesn't know that yet. That was a fun little nod, you know? It was just a couple of sentences, but it made me really happy. Another thing that was super cool is how Jasper's power was expanded on. He's not just able to make everyone feel whatever emotion he is. He was able to extend his emotions out so far that he basically hid Bella and him from James for as long as possible before James got her scent. And that was why Bella was able to hide for so long and wasn't just immediately eaten. Genius. Loved it. Why was that not told to us before? That makes so much sense. It made me really happy. Jasper has more of a part of this book and more of a character. I also like how every one of the Cullen family had a very different idea of what being a vampire meant and what, you know, only drinking animals meant. They just seemed much more human. Aside from yeah, aside from Rosalie, who's just so selfish, it's insane. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Midnight Sun. Uh, let me know what you thought in the comments down below if you want. I'm always up for talking with other Twilight fans. Twihards? Is that what we're called? I had like an album when I was a kid. You know, like those 2009 albums, and it was all about the cast of Twilight. Not actually Twilight, just like just like Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson and stuff, and I did all the quizzes in it, and it came with posters of them and like how to DIY your shoes into looking like werewolf shoes and shit. Oh, it was so fun. Thanks for watching.